Hello and welcome to another in the series of Q&A vlogs that I've been putting together for you recently. Today's question is really rather thought-provoking and is around the subject of HMOs, otherwise known as houses in multiple occupation. So I'm going to go ahead and read you the question and hopefully be able to provide some equally thought-provoking responses. Okay, dear Hazel, I have found your video replies very interesting and stimulating. Thank you very much. I have a house that is converted into 3 self-contained independent flats. Each one is rated. I applied for planning permission to develop the loft as a studio flat. This was denied. I applied for planning permission to develop the loft. This was granted. I would imagine this loft, when developed, will be an annex to one of the flats. In terms of size, it is larger than the studio flats that Galliard homes are allowed to build, with a few exclamation marks. In terms, if it complies with habitable space requirements and is fully self-contained, no sharing of anything, but not rated separately, when the loft is rented, would the house suddenly become HMO, requiring a licence? I am complying with everything, including linked smoke alarms. There is no gas to the loft. Nobody will share anything. I hope you find this an interesting question. Kind regards, SCP. Now, this person would rather remain anonymous, which is absolutely fine, but certainly I do find this a very interesting question, SCP. So let me do my best to answer it for you. So first of all, there are different types of HMO. The most common ones being shared houses or flats, like most people would understand that being the concept of HMO. But HMOs can also be bedsits, and bedsits can constitute individual flats within a block building, more commonly in converted buildings, so buildings which used to be one sort of 5-bedroom house, for example, that has now been sort of chopped up into 3 or 4 flats. And that sounds similar to this type of scenario. Other HMOs can constitute hostels and also B&B and hotel situations where you have more permanent residents living in those types of properties, but also boarding houses and other forms of accommodation where you've got sort of transitional care for homeless people. So there are lots of different types of HMO. So that's the first thing. What I would suggest that you do in this particular situation is speak to the planning department, where you've obviously sought planning permission to convert the loft. You speak to the planning department to explain the situation with your property already and see whether the work that you're going to or you're planning on doing is going to turn it into an HMO, and therefore you may potentially have to apply for planning permission for change of use from a single dwelling house to an HMO. So that's the first port of call if I were you. Now, just because it's, nobody's going to be sharing facilities, it's quite an unusual situation because you've got 3 separately rated units and 1 which would not be rated. So it is quite an interesting scenario. So definitely speak to your local planning department to find out if it constitutes a change of use and whether it will indeed constitute an HMO. The next thing you need to do is speak to the HMO officer in your local authority, and if you don't have a dedicated HMO officer, because some local authorities don't, then the next person to speak to would be the environmental health officer who deals with HMOs. Now, it sounds like you've already spoken to the fire officer with regards to the fire regulation, so that's fantastic. And it sounds like you want to do everything right, which is equally fantastic. So it really is just a question of speaking to the different parts of the council that you need to in order to make sense and understand what you can do and what you can't do in this particular situation. But quite commonly, one end of the council won't necessarily know what the other end of the council is doing in terms of this type of situation. So it's important that you speak to both parties to make sure that you are fully compliant with what you intend to do for the property. Now, I'm assuming that you are the freeholder of the entire unit, and so that should give you more flexibility in terms of being able to do this type of development. But essentially, yes, I can't give you a straight answer as to yes, it will definitely turn it into an HMO, because there are different regulations in different parts of the UK and under the different types of HMO that you have. So definitely seek the advice of the planning department of your local authority and the HMO officer or environmental health officer, and they should give you the right guidance to help you to figure out whether you can actually do this or whether you're going to have to apply for planning again for change of use, and what additional works may need to be done to the property to make it fully compliant. And on another slightly a side note here, but equally as important, if you have any finance on the property and you're intending it, if it is going to be turning it from a residential unit, which is a dwelling house, which is the freehold unit with the separate leasehold flats in it, and you're now going to be turning it into an HMO, that it may affect the finance and also the insurance. So also check out those angles as well, just to make sure everything is completely covered. And then in that way, you'll be going into this with your eyes fully wide open. So I hope you found that equally as interesting and stimulating as I found your question. And if anybody else has got any comments around HMOs or would like to add anything to this particular scenario, then feel free to make a comment below. And SCP, once you've had your answers from the local authority, it'd be great if you could also leave a comment below. I believe you can make an anonymous comment, so go ahead and leave us the response that you've had so that other people can benefit from this answer as well. So thanks again for listening in, and I'll see you again soon.